Hello, my name's Bill MacKeith. I'm an organiser of the campaign to close Campsfield and end all immigration detention since 1993. I just wanted to make a point about housing, because although this session is largely about migration and refugees and detention and jungles and things like that, Calais, the topic for the weekend is housing. So I just thought I'd read out this from the leaflet. The subject is deadly serious: to build a system that offers safe, secure, affordable and low-impact housing for all. Well, if you wanted to think of something that's the antithesis of that, you could look at one of the UK's 10 immigration detention centres. They are not safe, they are not secure, they are very expensive, and they're not low impact. I also think the connection with housing is quite important in that in the discussion about the so-called refugee crisis, which is more of a crisis of how people react to movements of people than a refugee crisis, an issue that's brought up quite often is that they're going to take our jobs, they're going to take our housing, and it's very important that in dealing with housing, that's challenged, because I know you're discussing different kinds of housing, not just building more houses, but the issue is largely a matter of supply and not being enough housing. So to blame the migrant and the refugee for the shortage of housing is something that anyone working in housing has got to be fighting against, in my opinion. Now, I'm talking about immigration detention because Campsfield Immigration Removal Centre is 6 miles down the road from here. It's been open since 1993. Over the last 23 years, about 35,000 people have been detained there without charge, without time limit, without proper access to lawyers, without proper health care, without proper parliamentary oversight, run by private companies in the main who are even more unaccountable, for profit, which is a pretty sick idea that you make money out of locking up innocent people. So the theme of this session being how to build solidarity links across borders. I mean, you could say on this issue we need to go abroad, but you don't. You need to go just down the road, or even here on the issues that Barbara has talked about, or the issues that I think are going to be discussed on Sunday in Host Oxford, providing housing for refugees. But in terms of immigration detention, you can do a lot to mitigate the bad side of it, immigration detention, and to end it. So I'm just going to reel off some things you can do quite easily. You can visit detainees at Campsfield. You can do it if you have a name, if the person wants to be visited. You can do it through an organisation called Asylum Welcome, or if you're a student, you can do it through Oxford Migrant Solidarity. They have websites. These are very important visits for the detainees as a demonstration of solidarity. You can help them get access to legal advice. You can help them get medical support. You can give them moral support. You may be able to stand as a surety in a bail application hearing where they can ask for release on bail, and it entails you going to an immigration court and saying, yes, I will stump up £100 if they do a runner, or £500 if they do a runner. You'll know the person, you'll know they're not going to do a runner, and you'll be very glad to get them out of what is, in effect, a prison. You can also help them argue for their cases, whether it's as a migrant or as a refugee, as Barbara has said. You can help them when they take collective action, when they write a petition, or when they write a letter signed by many detainees, or they take action in some form as a protest. Now, in terms of building solidarity internationally, we've found in the campaign to close Campsfield over the years that you tend to work with national groups who are numerous in a detention centre at any particular time. So we've worked with groups of Côte d'Ivoirians, Ivory Coast people, Nigerians, groups of Nigerians, Algerians, Afghans, Kurds, Iraqis. Fantastic people, quite a lot of them quite political. So that's an honour and an education to do that. You can facilitate their access to the media, national and local. So they have mobile phones inside. They can ring Oxford, BBC Radio Oxford. Their voices have been heard occasionally like that, but not enough. These are things which the migrants are the actors in. But there are other things, of course, that the migrants, including refugees, can't do. And just a few things on that front. We've worked with trade unions locally so that the Oxford Trade Union Council has supported the campaign to close Campsfield since it started. We've managed to get 6 national unions to adopt a policy of an end to immigration detention. We've worked with local councils. The Kidlington Parish Council calls for Campsfield to be closed, and the Oxford City Council calls for Campsfield to be closed. The District Council and the County Councils have called for Campsfield not to be doubled in size, which was quite a victory because they're Conservative controlled. That was in 2015, when we managed to work with the Amnesty International groups in the city and the university to get letters signed by 20 college heads to the Prime Minister calling for the expansion not to go ahead. And it was stopped. There was another letter signed by 20 or 25 county organisations, including Asylum Welcome, Bail for Immigration Detainees, Refugee Resource, all these organisations that do such a lot of work to support refugees and other migrants. I should say that in the process, you make friends, you go to weddings, you get godchildren. It's an amazing education and life-changing thing, and it's really useful because it's important on a national and an international scale. Have I got another 5 minutes? Yeah? Okay. You're more effective if you act nationally. So we helped to set up the Barbed Wire Britain Anti-Detention Network. We were instrumental in setting up the Detention Forum, which is a very effective, look at their website, Detention Forum, umbrella group lobbying to challenge immigration detention. We've worked closely with the National Coalition of Anti-Deportation Campaigns, now known as Right to Remain. And if you've got a friend who's seeking the right to remain, go on their website, Right to Remain. They have a very good toolkit. We've helped to organise national demonstrations with Right to Remain and what used to be the Committee to Defend Asylum Seekers. We've organised demonstrations at every detention centre, especially on the day that they open. There are 10 detention centres, 8 run by private companies and 2 run by the prison service. There has been progress. There's been, over the last 3 years, there was a parliamentary inquiry, an all-party parliamentary inquiry, including peers and MPs, which produced a report which came out March last year, and recommended a 28-day time limit, proper judicial oversight, various other reforms. That was debated in September, the first time immigration detention has ever been debated in the House of Commons, which seems incredible, but it was. And the motion to support those recommendations was carried with 1 abstention, which was the Immigration Minister. Not that it means anything, because there are only 40 MPs in the chamber, but it was an important advance. International. I think the work that you do can be strengthened enormously if you have international links. We organised a conference in Oxford called Barbed Wire Europe, which was about detention in Europe. We had 125 people from 25 countries, and the links we made there have continued to this day. They've included working with groups like No One is Illegal and Droit Devant in France, the Sans-Papiers Coordination Committee, to organise 3 international days of action for migrant rights in the mid-2000s, what are they called, 2000s, between 2000 and 2010. And they included actions in 60 different cities across Europe, mainly in the south, mainly led by migrants in the south, not in the north. There were actions in the north, but they weren't led by migrants. I just want to point out two things to you. This is something that nobody else has seen because it's not being published till the end of the month. This is a map of detention centres in Europe produced by a network called MIGREUROP, which is an anti-detention network. And there are some copies at the back if you'd like a copy. I've just been asked to review a book called No Borders. You may have heard of the No Borders movement, and it's in my bag. And if you could pass me the bag, I'll show you the front cover to you, because it's a really interesting book about the No Borders movement and how No Borders works in a kind of autonomous way, solidarizing with people in Calais, mounting actions and that sort of thing. That's it. The author is Natasha King. You may know her, some of you. It's a really excellent book, quite short. Let me try and wind up, because I'm sure I'm reaching my time. Well, I think I'll stop there, because there'll be time for more discussion. And I just want to point out that this is a detention centre down the road. If you live in Oxford, you have a responsibility to take this issue up. You really do. Once they start doing what they've been doing there for the last 20 years, it'll lead on, it'll lead on, it'll lead on. And the fact that detention expansion has stopped for the time being doesn't mean that under May, for instance, the expansion of detention cannot be picking up again. Britain has a terrible record in Europe. It leads in the numbers detained and the lack of judicial oversight. So you've got a duty to take this issue up.